start. We're going to keep to our time as well. We have until 6:30 this evening. Mr. Kidd, you still have some people coming in the waiting room?
I think we, yeah, still got some people coming in.
Okay. All right, it's 5:02. We'll continue to let folks in as we go. We know we appreciate and value your time, and we want to make sure we have ample opportunity for discussion and sharing of information. So good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Newton, the superintendent. Thank you, high school parents, for joining us this evening. We appreciate it. We have our high school team here, our interim principal, Deb Kelly, our interim assistant principal, Dave Fasulo, and our assistant principal, Henry Kidd. So I want to welcome the three of them. They are going to run you through a slideshow this evening and be running tonight's meeting. Just a few points that I want to bring forward before I turn it over to them for tonight's presentation, and then the questions that you might have. And just some side notes, we're going to leave everyone muted. Just so you're aware, we're going to control that. We're going to use the chat session for questions. So your questions will be able to go into the chat, and Mr. Kidd, Mr. Fasulo, and Mrs. Kelly will talk to you about that in just a minute. So first and foremost, I want to thank you all, for your patience with all of this. This has been a summer like no other. We have been working round the clock to try and get our schools open. They will be open. They will be open in the hybrid model. So hopefully this is not the first time anyone is hearing that out there, but our schools will be open in the hybrid model, and school will start for students on the 31st of August. We pushed out that survey, and I know that and I communicated out some more this morning in a letter. We are really desperate for those responses to the survey. And the reason for that is for the cohorting that needs to take place. We are cohorting by family. So we need to make sure that we get as many responses as possible so we can run that through our system. It's an algorithm that takes place through the student management system, Infinite Campus. And that will give us our cohorts, A and B, and balancing those out is extremely important. You as parents, especially our parents of younger students, middle school and elementary, for childcare purposes, for work schedules, you all need to have that information. You need to know when your kids are going to be coming to school, whether it's on Monday, Tuesday, or whether it's going to be on Thursday, Friday. So very important component. We've received also hundreds of questions. We appreciate all of that. We appreciate the feedback, the thoughts. We cannot respond to all of them. We're trying to group those together and consolidate and get information back out to you. Hence the town hall meeting this evening for the high school, the town hall meeting that will take place for the middle school and elementary schools on Thursday. Additionally, mandates and changes, they still continue to come down, from the state. I hate telling you one thing on a call or in a letter and then having it change, the next week. And that has happened, quite a bit. Hence, our reopening plan. There's some things in there that have already changed and been adjusted. Hence how we organize the cohorts. So that problems of that nature come forth, but we're trying to be as responsive to you as possible when those changes are present. And lastly, I just want to make mention, look, in all of this, the safety of your students, the safety of our staff is imperative. It's everything that we're trying to focus on and in all of our decision making. So first and foremost, that remains our focus, and we will do everything possible to ensure that that is in place and remains in place in all that we do with the return of kids. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Kidd, and Mr. Fasulo. Mr. Fasulo, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Kelly. I am the new interim principal of the high school. For those of you that don't know me, I have been here, this is my 20th year at the high school. I spent my first 15 years in the counseling office and have hosted under those circumstances, quite a few parent meetings, but I have to say, I don't know that we've ever had attendance quite as good at this. So maybe Zoom meetings are the way to go. We're going to walk you through a little bit about what the hybrid model means, and then also exactly, more specifically, what that means for the high school. So kind of just going over our agenda, I'm going to have my two assistant principals also introduce themselves. We'll talk about the district hybrid model. We're going to talk a little bit about drop off and pick up at the high school, kind of take you through the day at the high school. What's it going to be like to drop your student off? What's the schedule going to look like? What's a classroom going to look like? What are new things this year for those of you that have students returning to the high school, and a little bit about just overall health and safety. So Mr. Kidd, Mr. Fasulo, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Henry Kidd. This year, I will be the assistant principal for 10th and 12th graders. This is the beginning of year 17 for me at the high school. Prior to being named assistant principal at the beginning of last school year, I was a social studies teacher for 15 years. So thank you all for coming tonight. We miss the students greatly and are looking forward to seeing them back in the building soon.
Welcome, everybody. My name is David Fasulo. This is my 28th year in East Lyme. The last 3 years, I've been an assistant principal at East Lyme High School, but my primary role was the director of Coastal Connections. Prior to that, I was at the middle school for quite a long time, and I actually started in the high school in 1993. Looking forward to working with all the students, and even though these are challenging times, we're really looking forward to the challenges we can face together. Thank you.
Great. So as Mr. Newton said, we're going to have people kind of hopefully hold off a little bit on questions until we have a chance to go through this, and then you can put your questions into the chat. So hybrid model, what exactly does that mean? So I think most of you have hopefully seen these slides, these first few slides that we have, because they were sent out by the district. So what a hybrid model is going to look like at the high school is going to mean that your students are going to come to school for 2 days, either Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Friday. And on Wednesdays, everyone will be home. 2 days, whether that's Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday or Friday, will be a day 1 and a day 2 at the high school. So your students will go through each of their classes with their teachers for 2 days. During that time, they will have an opportunity to also develop a plan for what the other 2 days that they're out, would that be that Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, so that they know exactly what the expectations are for them during the time that they're not in school. On Wednesday, we'll be holding a synchronous half day virtually. So students will actually log in and have class with their teacher, shortened class of direct instruction for a half a day of school. And then in the afternoon, while they're at home, they'll have the opportunity to, connect with their teacher through office hours or a variety of other opportunities, possibly with support people. The 2 days that they're home, they should have a learning plan in front of them. They should know exactly what the expectations are. But the 2 days that they're home, that's your family's decision as far as what that day looks like for them. There's not a specific time that they have to be doing their work. There's no specific schedule for them. As Mr. Newton mentioned before, we'll be determining the cohorts by household. So once we have an idea of who's going to be here, our Infinite Campus student information system will actually determine the 2 different cohorts, whether your child will come to school on Monday and Tuesday, or whether your child will come to school on Thursday and Friday. This slide shows just a little bit of information. Our 2 full days in school are our typical time, 7:30 to 2:10. Your half day will be 7:30 to 11, which is our typical time for a half day schedule when we're in school. There'll be 2 days full in school, as I mentioned, with synchronous and asynchronous time with the teachers. And then every Wednesday half day will be the whole class together. So that will be an opportunity for both halves of each of the 2 cohorts, to come together and be with a teacher for that direct instruction every Wednesday. That gives us an opportunity to make sure that the class is a whole class, because should we get back to a point where we're able to be here full time, they would all be in class together. So I'm hoping that that time turns into an opportunity for everybody to kind of see who else is in the class and have some time directly with the teacher. And then they'll have 2.5 full days at home, which is completely asynchronous learning. They won't be in front of their computer necessarily. They won't be receiving instruction that way. They might have work that they have to do on their computer. And they'll be able to do whatever it is that they've determined with their teacher as their learning plan, their assignments, their expectations over those 2.5 days. When we refer to a personalized learning plan, we're talking about basically what the teacher and the student decide that student needs to work on in the 2.5 days that they're not involved with, directly involved in school, whether that be through their Zoom meeting on Wednesday or their time here for the 2 days. And we're hoping that teachers and parents through Google Classroom for the high school, teachers will be communicating with parents weekly. Things are going to look a little different than they did in the spring. I think one of the things that we heard a lot of feedback about was whether or not there was enough rigor in the spring, how we were doing assessments, how we were doing attendance. So attendance will be taken every day, whether they're in school or they're learning asynchronously. And then we will be using Google Classroom as our learning hub, which is consistently what we've been using for the last few years. So that's not really a change for any of our students. We're going to make sure that we are prioritizing our standards-based curriculum and really focusing on responsive teaching. And again, going back to making sure that we are really individualizing things so that we are accelerating our learning and making sure that each kid is getting what that they need. We'll be doing assessments both in school using paper, and we'll also be doing some assessments virtually using technology. And we will be grading. And this is, I think, for especially our high school students that were home in the springtime, one of the things that I really want to stress for them, because our fourth quarter was pass-fail. And that was very different for us. And now we're going back to what it was like before March 13th. We will be grading and using our assessments and homework and everything else to determine grades. So resources that will be available include hopefully laptops as soon as possible and iPads that are provided by the district. They'll have internet access while they're here, and then hopefully they'll have internet access at home. If that is a challenge for you, please let us know. Mr. Kidd, this is a map of our school. Mr. Kidd's going to explain to you. So let's talk a little bit about the high school. We know that first thing in the morning is a challenge for everybody because the traffic is already bad. With fewer parents sending their kids on buses, we're anticipating that that's going to be even a little bit more challenging this year. So Mr. Kidd's going to explain to you this map.
Sure. Thanks, Ms. Kelly. Mr. Olson, the district head of security, safety and security, sat down with me today and sent me this overhead view of the school. Ms. Kelly can kind of scroll over it and show you where the high school is. Yep. And then where central office and Flanders School is, just so we have all are looking at the same thing. So really what Mr. Olson wants to stress as much as possible is parents using one of the 3 drop-off locations at the beginning of the day when dropping off their students for the school day. So he's asking that you use the Route 1 entrance near the Flanders Fire Department, and you can drop your son or daughter off in the Flanders Loop, which is adjacent to the football field. He doesn't want you traveling all the way down towards the pool. He wants you kind of dropping off at the end of that Flanders Loop, and then returning out the way you came near Flanders Fire Department. That's option 1. Option 2 would be to come in and to drop them off at the senior lot in between the football field and the baseball field, and then again exit the same way that you came in. Or 3, in the junior lot. And again, there's a loop there. You won't be able to access the main entrance of the school, but you drop off in the junior lot and then leave and exit the same way near the Flanders Fire Department. Again, we're trying to reduce the amount of traffic coming in and out of the main entrance, and also want to make sure that students are as safe as possible. The same process would occur for pickup in the afternoon. And the other thing Mr. Olson asked that I stress is that if you do drop your son or daughter off in the junior lot, that they use the sidewalk near the baseball field along the third base line there to walk into school, again, so that they're avoiding the traffic loop at the front of the school. So that is arrival, pickup, and drop off.
The one other thing that I would add is if you are dropping your child off in the loop, one of the things that we notice happens quite a bit is that the parent will wait until they're actually like right in front of the school to have the student get out of the car. So we'd ask that if you are close enough, you know, that 10 cars, 15 cars drop off and keep moving. The traffic gets backed up in that loop quite a bit between the buses, the teachers that are coming into park, and the parents dropping off. So once we have our students here at the school, what is the school day going to look like? Well, first, one of the things, and I think there are some students on this call too, so it's good for them to hear this too. One of the things that's going to be very different when we get to school in the morning is we're going to ask students to go directly to their class. Typically, the students congregate in the commons and wait until the beginning of first block to move on to their class. But we're going to ask them to go directly to their class, and as soon as they get off the bus, as soon as they get dropped off, because that will allow us to spread out through the building. And then we have created a schedule that we think will help us, especially in our hybrid model, socially distance as much as we possibly can. It's a very similar schedule to what we've done in the past with a couple of exceptions. We'll start the day off in either A block or E block, so either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. After the first block, we're going to have a daily advisory. So every time your student is here in school, we're going to have a 10-minute advisory check-in with their advisors. And we're implementing this for a couple of reasons. One is to do a quick social emotional check-in and make sure that everybody's doing okay. We know this has been an incredibly stressful time and a very traumatic time for a lot of our kids. So we want to make sure that we have eyes on them every day and making sure that if they need any support outside of the classroom, that we're aware of that and able to provide it. We're also going to use this as an attendance time. So if your student is in school at that point in time, great. If they're not, this will be the time that's used to send out the robocalls for attendance. Students will continue on to second block, which is very similar to what we've done in the past. And then the big change is to our third block of the day. So third block of the day, whether that be C or G, is now going to be divided into 3 lunch waves. For those of you that are new to the high school, in the past, we've had 1 lunch wave, which is over 1,000 students eating at the same time. And with the commons, and it has been a 45-minute lunch between the commons and students that go off to clubs and organization meetings. It's worked out really well because it's allowed kids to socialize during lunch with everyone else in the building, to have those club meetings, to meet with teachers if need be. But right now we can't put 1,000 people in the commons. So we've divided it into 3 lunch waves. Every student, every teacher will still have a half hour to eat. And then we've also worked in 20 minutes in between each lunch wave to clean the tables so that everything will be cleaned in between every student having their lunch. So that block will take up all 3 lunch waves with 2 cleaning times in between. And then when that's all done, we'll move on to the last block. So in a cohorting model, we're estimating that we're going to have about 175-ish kids in the lunchroom at the same time. And we have worked out the numbers and everything, and we believe that we would be able to socially distance so kids can all be in the commons in the cafeteria to be able to have lunch. This is a picture of one of the classrooms. We're anticipating that we're not going to remove all of the desks from the rooms, but what we did was we removed them enough so that you could see this would be how a typical classroom would look and what the seating of each student would look like within a classroom that typically has 25 seats in it. So with the hybrid model, we're able to reduce that number enough so that students are pretty distant from one another in the class, as well as distant enough from the teacher so that everybody is a safe distance from one another. So changes this year. Obviously, the biggest change is that we're going to a hybrid schedule and that we will have only 50% of the student body physically present in the building so that we can maximize our social distancing. Arrival to school is going to be a big change for a lot of the kids. That is a very social time usually down in the commons, and they will not be able to do that. They're going to need to go straight to class. Advisory is another change for us. The 10-minute check-in, I think, is going to be really helpful in us making sure that we're taking care of our kids' social emotional health. 3 lunch waves. I've been here, this is my 20th year. This is the first time we've ever had lunch waves in my time here. So this is a big change for everybody. And I know that there's going to be some kids that are going to be disappointed in this. The other change with it that comes with it is that we will be in the commons and the cafeteria for lunch, not throughout the entire building, which in the past kids have had the opportunity to be able to go to the to see teachers or to go to their meetings, and also to go up to the library. Because there will be classes in session, everyone's going to need to stay in the commons for that half hour. And then at the end of the day, we're planning on staggering our dismissal so that we won't have large crowds of kids all coming out of the building at the same time. So we will have part of the building leave at one time and part at the other time, still in plenty of time for them to be able to get onto the bus. Mr. Fasulo?
First, let me say we're all very much looking forward to seeing all the kids coming back in person. We're really looking forward to see those kids again and chatting with the parents and everyone. However, because of the pandemic, there are some obvious concerns. To help care for everyone in our Viking community, we please ask that if a student is feeling ill, that they please stay home. Each morning, again, if you can, just check if there's signs and symptoms of COVID, sustained fever, flu-like symptoms and such. Wear a face covering, mask in school, mask on a school bus and in the classrooms, and wash and sanitize hands frequently. Again, we're very much looking forward to all the students returning, but we do have to have these precautions in place.
And a couple of other things we're doing to try to help with the social distancing. There'll be signs all over the building reminding students to stay to the right in the hallway, and we'll be marking the building's hallways so that they understand where the right is, and asking them to try to keep 6 feet between each other as they're walking through. They will be expected to be wearing masks during that time too. We'll also be limiting the number of students that are allowed into the restrooms at a time, so that there's a safe number of students in the bathroom at any given time. So I guess at this point, if people have questions, they're welcome to put that into the chat, and we will try our best to answer what we can.
Yep, Ms. Kelly, I'm looking at the chat now, and if you're ready, I can start to
Sure.
try and ask some of these questions. And just for everybody, we appreciate your patience. There's a lot of people and if we do not have an answer to a question, we will do our best to get back to you and find out as quickly as we can. I'll start right at the top. The first question is, why are the 2 days at home 100% asynchronous? Why are the 2 days at home 100% asynchronous while cohort A is in school? Can't the teacher be presenting to cohort B via Zoom and vice versa? This would enable the teacher to teach to the kids all 5 days rather than have 2.5 days of asynchronous learning.
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons that we have decided not to go with that model. First and foremost, we don't have cameras in all of the classes. Secondly, there are some privacy issues around sharing classrooms virtually. So that's not the model that we have decided to. The state also has asked that 50% of the teaching be synchronous and 50% asynchronous. So our 2 days out are our half of the asynchronous time.
Next question, will there be a freshman orientation?
Great question. Yes, there will be a freshman orientation. It's going to look very different than it has in the past. The counseling staff is working right now on having students come in 10 at a time with each of their counselors, and spending a little bit of time with their counselor and having an opportunity to talk about what school's going to look like and also see the building. And right now I believe that that is scheduled for the 20th, which is a Thursday. There'll be information coming out from the counseling department about that by the end of this week.
Can students go outside during lunch?
Students can go outside during lunch when the weather is nice. We have fairly limited space for them to do that. They can go out to the courtyard that is behind, like by the gym, and there are a couple of picnic tables there. You've probably seen them. And then we have an inner courtyard that has a couple of picnic tables also. That's very small, so we will be limiting the number of students that can go out there. But when the weather is nice, those spaces can be used for lunch.
This question's about masks. What does enforcement of the mask on students look like? I'm unclear as to how students can be made to keep them on and not remove them. What are the consequences?
Well, most simply put, the students have to have a mask on to be in school unless they have a documented health reason to not have a mask on. We are encouraging teachers to work in mask breaks. Obviously, they won't have a mask on during lunch. And mask breaks would involve them needing to go to the courtyard, one of the courtyards with their class to take their masks off. But they have to have a mask on to be in school. And if they don't have a mask on, then they're going to be asked to go home.
Will there be hand sanitizer stations throughout the school?
Yes, there'll be hand sanitizers available throughout the school. I don't know, I know they'll be at the entrances, at the entrance and the exit. And in each of the classes, we'll have whatever tools they need in order to sanitize hands and surfaces.
Can students, will absences all be considered excused to encourage kids to stay home if not feeling well?
So if they're home because they're sick, then the absence would be considered excused. This is a little bit, our attendance is going to be a little bit different because we're asking people to stay home a lot more than we have had to ask them to stay home in the past, especially if they test positive for COVID. So we'll obviously be handling that on a case-by-case basis, but it will look a little bit different than it has in the past. I would encourage anyone who does have an ill child at home to make sure that we have the documentation of that and we know that so that we can help support their learning during the time that they're not in school.
Ms. Kelly, I have a question about parent access for Google Classroom. How can parents access Google Classroom?
So the way Google Classroom is set up, if the teacher has your email address, you can opt in to get updates from Google Classroom about assignments. That's one way of doing it. And you're going to get an email that's going to basically summarize the assignments that the student has been given. And I believe you can have that. There are a couple of different intervals that you can choose for that. The other option is to ask your child to log into Google Classroom and show them what it is that they're looking at so that you can see exactly what they see too.
I feel like I'm rapid firing questions at you here, Ms. Kelly. How will the teachers cover all of the curriculum with only half of in-person education time?
Well, they're only going to be here for 2 days. They're going to be covering a week's worth between the synchronous and the asynchronous time. And that's part of what the learning plans will help with as far as continuing to learn, even though they're not necessarily in the building.
This question's about Wednesdays. Will all 8 blocks be held on Wednesdays?
Yes, they will. So from 7:30 to 11, they'll be fairly quick. They're going to be about 20 minutes long, and it's an opportunity for teachers to provide direct instruction during that time to the entire class. But yes, all 8 blocks will meet on that day.
Okay. This next question, I think, is one that we're still working on, but we can at least talk it through. How is attendance taken during asynchronous?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we're still working on through Infinite Campus, and it's part of their hybrid program. So I'm not 100% sure what that's going to look like, but I'll be sure to make sure that everybody understands that once we know.
Will PE still take place?
Yes, PE will still take place. Again, in a hybrid model, we're only looking at half of the PE class. And while we will be using some of the space that PE classes have typically used, they will, for the most part, be outside as long as the weather allows them to be outside. We've spoken with the PE department. We'll be meeting with them again. You know, they're working on what that's exactly going to look like, but we will still be having PE classes.
This question, if students aren't comfortable after a couple of weeks at school, can they then transfer to distance learning?
So the virtual Viking opportunity is basically a quarter by quarter situation. So if you're concerned that your student is not going to be comfortable in school, or you have reasons to, health reasons for them to not be here, you need to let us know that now so that they can start out in virtual Viking. And then at the end of the quarter, which for us is the beginning of November, they could switch back.
This next question is about music class. How will choir take place?
That's a great question. Again, we were looking at numbers today, actually, and under a hybrid model, the choir classes will be fairly small. So if they can be outside, they will be outside. They have to maintain 12 feet of distance for choir. And if they can't be outside, we are looking at being able to distance them in either one of the music rooms for the very small choirs or in the auditorium for the larger choirs. But at half, it's a lot more manageable than it would be if it were the whole group.
Bear with me for a second. I'm just trying to read. When will there be an informational meeting for the virtual Viking parents? I'm guessing that's in the works after the survey.
Correct.
How is attendance taken for the 2 days at home? We covered that. What will the lunch break look like? Meaning, how are they going to be sitting? I know of one district that is requiring the students sit 6 feet apart and all face one way.
So if you've ever been in our commons, our tables for the most part are round. So students would be 2 students to a table sitting across from one another. So they will not be all facing the same way. They will be facing toward each other, but there'll be 6 feet of distance between them. And then in the other section of the commons are rectangular tables, and those will allow on either end of the table for kids to be 6 feet apart. So, I mean, we have spent quite a bit of time looking at the lunch situation and making sure that the kids are at least 6 feet apart while they're having lunch. That they will be, in some cases, facing toward each other. We are also looking at possibly putting up some dividers in some situations if we think that it's even coming close. But I've been assured that we have plenty of space under a hybrid model to be able to have lunch in the commons and practice social distancing.
This is a follow-up question on bathrooms. Can you please elaborate more on limited individuals in the bathroom? Bathroom cards don't seem to work, and a majority of the time students feel unsafe going to the bathroom while others are in there possibly vaping.
Well, the bathrooms will only be allowing enough students in there based on the number of either stalls, urinals, or sinks. So there'll be a very limited number of kids in there at a time. We're hoping to possibly be able to have hall monitors for that. If we don't have the people power to do that, we'll be asking students to self-monitor, and then the administration and security will be checking on that. There are 3 bathrooms throughout the building. Each one of them will have signs on them and in them reminding students of what the capacity is, as well as to wash their hands and socially distance and all of the other safety issues that we're hoping that they comply with.
This is another question about attendance. If my child is absent during the in-person day, Will the materials be available in Google Classroom, Google Docs, or do we have to wait till the next in-person day to catch up?
The teachers will be posting not only, the homework, but also the content in Google Classroom. But again, if your student is ill and especially if you think they're going to be out more than one day, I highly encourage you to let the teacher know, have your student email the teacher, make sure that they stay in touch with them so that they get everything that they need. If it's going to be a longer term, you might also want to include the student's counselor in the conversation so that we can make sure that they're getting any information. It should be on Google Classroom, but sometimes there are conversations or other pieces of learning that are happening, and we can help support that, especially if it turns out to be a couple of weeks that the student is out.
Mrs. Kelly, there's a question about if a student tests positive for COVID-19. Do you want me to try to field that one?
Sure.
So we have the roadmap to reopening our schools, which is located on the district website. We're on version 1.0 currently. I believe there'll be a new version coming this Friday. There is a section, page 15, called Response to Outbreak. It has a lot more of the detailed information. Schools may implement a short-term closure. It's really up to our nurse, ledge light, and our COVID-19 coordinator to decide if further isolation is needed, or if a student or teacher can discontinue their self-isolation. So at this point, I think the best is direct parents to the roadmap to reopening our schools. And again, that will be updated more than likely this Friday.
Thanks.
I believe this question was covered in Mr. Newton's, Superintendent Newton's letter today. It reads, in order to reduce kids on buses, our neighborhood is trying to develop a schedule to carpool. Will that be considered in cohort assignment? And if you, sorry, go ahead, Deb.
I believe the cohorting is going to be based on households and classes. But there are other factors that will go into it, but I don't know if there's anything geographically involved in the cohorting. I can find out.
Another question. My question is regarding remote learning. If this is done for the first quarter and instruction is completely different from what the East Lyme curriculum teaches, if the student returns after the first quarter, would they be not following the class syllabus as taught by East Lyme teachers? Thanks for your response.
If students are returning between first and second quarter to the classroom, we're going to have a number of students that are going to do that. So we'll work with the classroom teachers to understand what the curriculum was that they have already covered, and we will work to make that transition as smooth as possible. That's not really new for us in a lot of ways. We have students that move in and out of the district all the time, and we're always working with our students and their families to help with those kinds of transitions. This might actually be easier because we'll have a handle on exactly what the curriculum looked like, and we'll be able to facilitate that transition with the students, I think, a lot more smoothly.
Starting off as hybrid, if we ever change our minds and decide that remote is a much better choice, can we switch?
I believe that we'll be talking about changes only at the quarter. I don't know what November is going to bring as far as where we are at that point in time, but there would only be discussion about changing programs at the quarter, which, as I mentioned, is for us the beginning of November.
Where will advisory be, and how will you separate the students there?
So advisory classes, we've overhauled advisory, and this is completely separate from everything else. We were in the process of doing this anyway as part of our mastery-based diploma assessment and our vision of the graduate. So each student is going to be assigned to a classroom with their advisor. There'll be 2 advisors for each advisory, and they are all going to be assigned to actual classrooms. I know for any of you that are familiar with the advisory program in the past, some of the advisories were in the commons or in the library, and that will not be the case this year. They will all be in classrooms. And again, because this is a hybrid model, it will only be half of the advisory there that is there at any point in time. So it will actually be smaller than a classroom would be. So there'll be plenty of space in each of the classes for students to be able to be socially distant.
Next question is just curiosity about when high school schedules are going to be sent out.
That question gets asked every year. I think that the goal is to have them sent out the week of the 24th. So in addition to the master schedule having to be developed, which is always a huge undertaking, that schedule now needs to be made into a hybrid form. So this all just requires a little bit more time. But we'll send out an email to everyone and let them know that it's in their Infinite Campus once the portal is open and they can see it.
Stacy has a question about communication. What can we expect as weekly communication from teachers? Communication in the spring was not very informative.
Communication from the high school is going to happen through Google Classroom. So again, if you either have your email address in there or you sign into your students' Google Classroom, you should be able to get updates. We'll be working with the teachers on this. Again, the spring is very different than what we're planning on doing in the fall. So there'll be some conversation with the teachers during our professional development time to kind of get a sense of what that's going to look like and to try to make sure that you know what you're looking for when you're looking for that type of communication.
Will the students have a study hall on their days in school?
Yeah, so their schedule is going to be pretty similar to what it was before. They're just going to be here only half of the time. So yes, if they were going to have 7 classes in a study hall, they're still going to have 7 classes in a study hall. So it really depends from student to student what that looked like. I'm going to anticipate that another question might be for senior parents. Will there still be senior dismissal and late arrival? So seniors that have a study hall first thing in the morning or at the end of the day are allowed to either come in late or to leave early, and we'll still be doing that also.
Okay. There are a bunch of questions about virtual Viking and back and forth between the two, and I think we did our best to cover that. How will distancing be enforced during lunch while kids have no masks?
That's going to be based on the seating. So we're making sure that they're all sitting at least 6 feet apart. And again, this is going to be a huge culture change for them because lunch is very social, but they're not going to be able to get up and congregate in groups to chat with each other. They're also not going to have as much time as they've had in the past. So by the time they get their lunch and sit down and have their lunch, there'll be a lot less time for that social aspect, but there will be teachers and administrators down in the lunchroom, as well as security every day for every lunch wave.
Okay. This next question is about, will fall sports practices still take place at the normal time every day? Will teams be cohorted together at all?
Athletics those decisions are made by the CIAC and by the athletic director. So we are still, right now there's a tentative plan, but we're still waiting guidance on what that's going to look like as far as the fall sports are concerned.
Ms. Kelly, we were talking about this earlier today. Will there be clubs this year?
We hope so. We're encouraging so during the time that we're hybrid, we're encouraging there to be virtual meetings of clubs. When the teachers get back and we have a chance to talk to them about that, we'll talk a little bit more about how they're going to communicate that out and what that's going to look like for students. Should we come back full time, we did work out a schedule that because we're not going to have that time during lunch, if we're here full time, there will be time for us to have club meetings during a special X block. But we definitely are committed to trying to make sure that kids have as much of that club and organization, after school kinds of activities or during lunch kind of activities as they've had in the past. So we're hopeful that we can work out ways with the teachers for that to continue to happen.
Okay. Will there be sanitizing wipes in the classroom so the students can wipe down their chairs, desks, when they walk in and before they take a seat?
So my understanding is that there will be spray bottles of cleaner in the classrooms as well as paper towels. So because wipes are incredibly hard to come by, so that will be an option for students when they come into the classroom.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at. How does quarantining look if a student tests positive?
If they test positive while they're in school, if they're not feeling well in school, they're going to be brought to an isolation room until their parent can come to pick them up. As far as the quarantining is concerned, that they would be home during that time. And then, as I mentioned before, we would do our best to help support their classroom time and their learning during that time.
Can
Not
seniors
sure if
still
that answers that question.
Yeah, I think that I think if someone comes down with a fever or is symptomatic and we suspect COVID, they'd be in that isolation room, as Ms. Kelly mentioned. Can seniors still drive to school?
Yes. But there's a process for that. They have to get a parking pass, and all of the things that have been in place before will continue to be in place as far as parking is concerned. But yes, students with driver's licenses that have parking permits can drive to school.
Another virtual Viking question. Parking passes you just talked about. When the students are home for the 2 days plus the Wednesday of the hybrid learning, is their at-home learning just watching video camera of actual classroom time, or is it computerized work such as what was done at the end of last year?
That's going to be on an individual basis and vary probably from class to class, but that will be work that plan will be worked out with the teacher prior to them leaving during the 2 days that they're here and the half day that they're here on Wednesdays. It might be work on computer, it might be homework that's in their book, it might be reading. It will be independently done, but they will have a clear idea of what the expectation is from each of their teachers. And again, unlike the spring, all of this work is being graded. So that's going to be a whole different approach to what that stay at home time is going to feel like, I think, for the kids.
Are all classes being offered? Specifically, will some students be denied access to classes because of the cohort they are assigned?
As far as I know, all of the classes that we were offering are going to continue to be offered. The cohorts are going to be divided by the student information system, so those numbers are going to be very different than what we would ever be looking at typically. Every year there are classes that we don't offer because the overall number of students that have requested them didn't meet the threshold that we're looking for. But that happened long before we got to this point in time. So we're not changing any of the classes at this point based on the hybrid model.
Will virtual Viking students be allowed to participate in sports?
No. So students who are staying home for their academic day will not be involved in after-school activities.
A few questions, Deb, about Zoom and teachers being able to use Zoom to teach. And again, you talked about that with the limits as far as technology is concerned. I want to repeat questions here. We talked about desks. Can you comment on SAT for rising seniors who have not had the chance to take them?
So we are hoping, as long as we are able to be in the building, either as a hybrid or full attendance, to offer the SAT on the September date. In addition to that, We are hoping to offer the SAT on October 14th, which is a school day. All seniors should have received an email with a survey that asked whether or not they would like to take the test on that day, or if they are planning on taking it on a weekend day and want a voucher. The College Board and the state of Connecticut are providing every senior an opportunity to take the test for free. Again, we have absolutely no idea how many people, what the world is going to look like in a couple of weeks or in October, but it is our hope, and we will do everything in our power to offer both this Saturday, September date, and then I believe there's a Saturday, October date, but then there's also, we're going to do it in school on the 14th for students that would like to take it then.
Are there specific mask requirements?
My understanding is we are asking people to wear, your typical cloth mask that most of us have been wearing, a double layer mask. What would be acceptable in any outdoor, like at a store or any place like that. We will also have masks for students that forget them.
Will early bird PE still take place?
Yes, early bird PE is still going to happen.
Okay. Question about 504s. How are 504s going to be addressed? Will students have face-to-face time with their resource teacher? If they are using a program, i.e. the Sunday program for dyslexia, will they have access to the program at home?
I don't know about the program. I can look into that. But in terms of their access to their skill building teachers, they're going to see their skill building teacher, depending on their own personal schedule, at least once over the course of the 8 blocks, which is exactly the same as it would have been in a typical rotating day schedule. And then their skill building teachers, as well as some of the paraprofessionals that work with them, will also be available and reaching out on that Wednesday probably, and maybe some follow-up during the other days, depending on everybody's. They're all individualized plans. There'll be PPTs held. They'll all be held virtually. Same with 504. We'll be reaching out to students with 504 plans and making sure that, because accommodations for both IEPs and for 504 plans need to work for both home and in school, and we'll be reaching out and making sure that that's working for everybody. There'll be a lot of meetings in the first couple of months of school to make sure that we're covering all of that. We will be having them virtually, and Ms. Mothi up in the special ed 504 office will be reaching out to parents about that. You should also be hearing from, your students' resource room teacher in that first week too, to kind of set some expectations and know exactly what they're doing for each of the students. But that's going to be very individualized.
A question, Ms. Kelly, about a parent concerned about AP and honors classes. How is my child going to be only seeing their teacher in school 1 day a week and be taking all AP and honors classes? They can't be expected to finish all those curriculums and be teaching themselves rigorous material.
Well, I believe that the AP teachers will work out a way so that your student is getting what they need while they're in class in order to be best prepared to continue to move ahead with the curriculum during the time that they're not in class. Most of our teachers that have been teaching AP classes have been doing it for years, and they're readily prepared for this challenge, and it will be challenging. They're all fast-paced curriculums, but they will work that out so that your students are getting what they need on a weekly basis, and through Google Classroom.
I think I can answer this. We already kind of talked about Wednesday. It's a question about how the half-day Wednesday will work. Is that going to be live teacher? Yes. How will grading, we talked about grading. Sorry, I'm just trying to read and keep up with this at the same time. There's a lot of questions about sports and cohorting. I'm going to hold off on those because, those decisions aren't being made by us at this moment in time. How will you handle days off, i.e. holidays, PD, related to cohort AB? There are more Mondays off than Fridays.
Yes, we realize that, and that's an ongoing conversation that we've been having and will continue to have. We've actually counted up days, and we're trying to work that out. It's going to be challenging. We've talked about possibly 8 block days. That's a challenge for us, especially with our lunch waves. But we are continuing to have that conversation, and hopefully we'll have some answers for you next week.
Ms. Kelly, you, myself, and Mr. Fasulo were talking about this yesterday. There's a question regarding children self-monitoring mask wearing. How can we trust that children of parents who don't feel masks are necessary will actually wear masks? And I think that goes to the slide that's still up here. We're really asking for everyone's help in caring for our community. It's about the community. It's about taking care of one another. And no, not everyone thinks or acts the same way, but we are asking that, this is a school, it's our school. Everyone needs to feel safe here. So for the good of the community, we're strongly, we're asking that everyone cooperate with this to keep all of us safe, students and staff. I don't know if Ms. Kelly or Mr. Fasulo, you have anything to add, but that was something we were talking about yesterday. Mr. Fasulo, if I'm falling behind on the chat, so if you see any that I haven't hit, let me know. Yeah, a lot of parents are asking about virtual Viking. Mr. Kung says, Mr. Kidd, just trying to help you out for the meeting, from reading the chat, there needs to be some more talk about virtual Viking and switching in and out. A lot of questions about sports and virtual Viking. Will there be recorded lectures from teachers on asynchronous days?
I think that's going to vary from teacher to teacher. I think some teachers will be doing probably a little bit more of a flipped classroom. And other teachers will, again, that's going to be very individualized and vary from classroom to classroom. I've spoken with some teachers that definitely think that they're going to probably do some recordings, and other teachers that feel comfortable that they're going to be able to do what they need to do within the classroom.
I'm just going to kind of, address the virtual Viking piece here. There's a lot of people commenting here. Again, just to be clear, the deadline for that was extended, I believe, right, Ms. Kelly, to midnight.
Yep.
And then from there, once the district has numbers, there will be more information forthcoming. So I know there are a lot of concerns and there are a lot of people curious. Just please stay tuned there. Not trying to ignore those questions. Once a child is sent home because of suspected COVID symptoms, it takes several days to gain a test result. What will happen during those several days? Is everyone else quarantined, or do we just wait until finding out several days or a week later that everyone should have been quarantined and by then dozens of people are sick? Mr.
Fasulo, you want to take that one?
Well, again, I think we're going to consult with the nurse, and we're going to consult with our COVID-19 coordinators and make that call. I don't know if it'd be a short-term closure of 2 days. Again, that's something we're going to disseminate that information as fast as possible. We'll work with Ledge Light District. We'll work with the superintendent's office. We'll work with the school nurse and take our guidance from those professionals.
Ms. Kelly, it might be a good idea to run through just because of the number of questions about virtual Viking. We do have some slides that we can pull up to help you make that decision. And that might clarify some of what people are concerned about in the chat.
So for students choosing virtual Viking, that's going to be 5 days at home, working through the program through Edgenuity, which is an online program. You can read the information about that. Courses are aligned to state standards, Common Core. Those classes are, this is a temporary program. First of all, this would not be something that they would be doing hopefully for the whole year. And you can see what the schedule would be, where they're going to be a half day online with teacher support and a half day student driven based on whatever the course requirements were. And that would be home all 5 days. And then this slide gives you a lot more information. I'm not going to read through all of it. This was sent home, I think, a couple of times, and the link is on the website also for more information about virtual Viking. Virtual Viking is not a high school program. It's a separate program. So it's not going to align directly with the classes that we have here, but I think that they will dovetail quite well when the students come back.
There's a question regarding the criteria used to determine if the district can move to an all in-person learning model in early October. We were given guidance from that. I don't have it with me at this time, but I believe it has to do with infection rates, hospitalization rates. And again, we'll take further guidance from the DPH, which is Ledgelight for our community.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, so, you know, there's again, just for everybody, I'm seeing all the questions about virtual Viking. You know, we have those documented. I do not have all of the answers on the virtual Viking program. I see the concerns, but you know, we'll share these slides out. But got a lot of questions, Ms. Kelly, about virtual Viking.
There is a question about dismissal time. At this juncture, I believe dismissal time is still the same.
It's still 2:10. As I said before, we will be staggering the time that students leave the classroom to get down to the buses, so that we don't have 1,000 or 500 in this case students all at the door at the same time. But we'll still be dismissing, 2:05 to 2:10, and buses will roll at 2:20.
What happens if we just don't send our kids on the physical days for the first few weeks?
They're going to miss their instruction, and they're going to be absent. And if they're not sick, then it would be absent and unexcused. They're going to really miss out. So I would really strongly encourage everyone to, if you're not comfortable with your student being in school, to consider the virtual Viking option, so that they continue to have, some instructional time. If there are other concerns, please let us know so we can try to help support as much as possible. But it's important that they be in school just like any other time, so that they have, there's the academic side of it, and then there's the opportunity also to be around other people, in a more social emotional way. So we really hope that, if whichever you choose that your child be in school for one of those two programs.
When will laptops be passed out?
I don't personally know exactly. They've been ordered, and as soon as we have them, they will be passed out. That's the best I can tell you at this point in time. As with everything else in the world, delivery of things has been slowed down. Laptop ordering is happening all over the place. So as soon as we have them in hand and they are ready for the students, they'll be distributed.
For seniors, how will counselors connect with students to help with college planning?
So that's a great question. As far as our offices are concerned, and this is something just for generally speaking, we're going to try to limit the amount of people that are in any one office. And there's pretty big concern about the counseling office because especially with schedule changes and senior planning going on, that can be a hub of activity in September and October. So the counselors are working on a virtual appointment system. So students will, they also have each year has its own counseling Google Classroom that your student has been invited to join. And they will have a link there for students to be able to set up appointments. In addition to them being able to come in and see counselors one-on-one, they'll also be doing some virtual work with classrooms and with bigger groups. But they will still be able to meet with their counselor. It just is going to have to be by appointment only. They're not going to be able to just drop in. The counselors are also incredibly responsive to email. So if there are specific concerns that you have or your child has, I encourage you to email them. They're always really good about getting back with whatever information that you need. And then that's another way to also help set up an appointment with them. They're very aware, as we all are, with the fact that this current senior class has, between SATs and college applications and college visits, this has been a very unusual time for them and that this is a very challenging time for them. So we will do everything possible to try to help support them the best way that we can under very unusual circumstances, obviously, and very stressful circumstances. We do recognize that this is probably a class that's going to be impacted by this in many ways more than any of the other classes. So they are prepared and talking constantly about the best ways to support them.
Mrs. Kelly, this may be too far out, but there is a question about PSATs for juniors.
Mm-hmm. So PSATs are going to be, again, assuming that we're able to do it, also offered on October 14th, that Wednesday. We'll have the opportunity for juniors and seniors to come in for either PSATs or SATs if we are able to be in the building. That's not really that far out.
Oh, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question, Ms. Kelly. What happens if the survey is not completed? Are they automatically placed in the hybrid option?
I believe that is what will happen.
There is a question about pickup procedure for parents picking up. I assume that is the same. Mr. Kidd outlined the 3 areas.
Yes, as far as pickup at the end of the day is concerned.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes. It probably would be best to have a conversation with your child about where you're going to pick them up. Traditionally, I think most parents pull into that inner circle in anticipation of the fact that there are going to be a lot more cars doing that. I would encourage you to designate a spot, whether that be in the senior parking lot or the junior parking lot, where you're going to pick up your child and they can walk over to that spot. If they're being dismissed, that's a little bit different because we won't have the same traffic issues at a otherwise a random time of the day, and you'd be able to pull up and have them and pick them up outside of the door. As far as dismissals are concerned too, we are asking that parents call in and let us know when students are being dismissed and not have their students come into the attendance office telling us that they're going to have their parents call. We're working out a more streamlined way to handle dismissals so that we limit contact with the office and streamline it for students to be able to get out of the building as efficiently as possible.
Ms. Kelly, do you know if different levels of instruction will be available on Virtual Viking? For example, honors, AP, A, etc.
I do not know the specifics of the courses that are being offered on Virtual Viking, but we can find out.
If classes go 100% remote again, will there be Zoom or will it be the same as in the spring?
I do not know if we have determined that specifically yet. We're working right now on our hybrid model, which we're very hopeful that our hybrid are 100%.
And Ms. Kelly, back to Virtual Viking and the PSAT. Will students who take Virtual Viking be allowed to participate in the PSAT on October 14th?
That's a very good question. We'll have to have a conversation about that.
Why can't East Lyme use Zoom for teaching for all 5 days a week? You are giving laptops anyways.
That's a district decision, and we've addressed this already. We do not have the technology in the classrooms to be able to record or to, be able to broadcast all of the classes.
Will there be arrows and some one-way direction in hallways?
So within a hybrid situation, by reducing the population in the building, we don't think that we're going to need to have one-way hallways. We are going to divide the hallways and remind students to stay to the right. We're also going to mark them for 6-foot distancing. There will be a lot of signs throughout the building reminding them of that, and teachers and adults in the hallways also reminding them of that. The building with 500 students in it, we feel pretty confident people will be able to get past between classes without there being that much interaction of people. It literally is going, it's half. So we feel okay about them going in opposite directions. And of course, they will have masks on while they're moving from class to class also.
Ms. Kelly, if you don't mind, just let me step in a little bit. I know there's a ton of questions on Virtual Viking. I don't want to interject on your presentation, but I just want to get some further information out to parents, because I know that this is a big decision. Look, the Virtual Viking, this is a temporary program that the state could take away at any point. It is not supposed to be the same rigorous curriculum and program that would be provided during the the hybrid model or while kids are in school. We don't know when it would end. We don't know how long it could last. We're following the state guidance as it pertains to our requirement, and the requirement is when I'm reading right from the state document that school districts provide the opportunity for students to access 177 days of school and the 900 hours of instruction. It's individualized. I want to emphasize that. It's an individualized program. We are talking about ways, potentially, to maybe incorporate some East Lyme teachers in, but I'm very concerned, and we're all concerned that, we might not have enough teachers to do that. And we're also concerned about the number of teachers at the start of the year. So we're working through that. We are taking all this input. We're going to continue to look at Virtual Viking. Again, it is not something that's supposed to mirror what is happening, in school. The governor wants all kids back to school. We started off in the hybrid model to ease into it. And the plan is to go back potentially full in person by the middle of October. We're going to reassess. If you've seen some of my former communications, we're going to reassess at the beginning of October. So that is something we're definitely, at this point, we'll be looking at and planning to do. So we didn't want people to get get married to the Virtual Viking program. So just want to provide a little bit more clarity on that. We'll talk at central office about further developing some of that. And just a reminder, with the survey, I know we're pushing to get the responses to the survey, and you feel like might feel like they don't have enough information, but we have got to get some of our cohorts together, and we will look at movement between the two, the hybrid versus the Virtual Viking, as we move forward into the next couple of weeks for individuals. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to the high school.
Thanks, Mr. Newton.
Ms. Kelly, there's some questions from parents wanting to know if the freshman schedules will be ready for their orientation.
That's a good question. That crossed my mind when someone asked when the schedules are going to be available. That's going to depend, I believe, on how long it takes us to determine the cohorts. But we will do our best to at least let them know what their classes are going to be and what blocks they're going to be, even if at that point in time we don't know more than that.
Ms. Kelly, there's a question about sharing of PE lockers and how that is addressed.
At this point in time, in talking to our athletic director, we will not be using the PE lockers. So right now we are looking at the locker rooms being basically offline because we are not able to monitor it, because we can't guarantee social distancing, and we don't have lockers in there for everyone.
Eighth graders attending ELHS for math, Ms. Kelly. There's a question about that.
Yeah, so I've been back and forth actually today with our geometry teacher and Mr. Bitgood at the middle school, and we are trying to work out a way for that class to be, for those students to be able to connect, well, to either take the class virtually. We have a couple of different ideas, but it's definitely on our front burner, and we are trying to work out exactly what the details of that are going to be. But we haven't forgotten about them, and we will figure that out. Miss Gross, the teacher that teaches that geometry class, has put forward a couple of different ideas, including like a flipped learning opportunity. But she's very committed to making sure that they get the experience that they need.
Yeah, I've read it. I've read a few comments from parents mentioning how disappointed they were with the spring, and they want to know how it's going to be better now. Ms. Kelly, I can just start by saying that the spring was just an overnight switch. Everything in education changed really in a matter of hours. We got together on March 13th for a PD day, and the next day we were gone. And so for all of us, we had to reinvent our craft overnight. And now, we learned quite a bit. Obviously, in the spring, it was about trying to keep kids engaged. We've learned quite a bit. And we're going to use what we learned in the spring to start on a new footing this fall. I'm not sure if Dave or Deb, you have anything else to add, but just wanted to address a few comments that I saw there.
Yeah, we've had obviously a lot more time to plan for this, and we'll have a lot more time with the teachers during their professional development time to work out the details of this. So this will look very different than it did in the spring when, as Mr. Kidd said, overnight we had to transform what we were doing.
And we're looking at front-loading professional development for teachers to help better address the distance learning piece. We have Ms. Drown coming online to help answer some questions as well. We can just unmute Ms. Drown.
Did you need me to unmute her, Dave?
Yes,
Which is good.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening. I apologize for that.
Sorry, Amy.
I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So I just want to attempt to answer and provide some clarity in regards to the instructional model, sort of spring to now. So I can assure you with 100% certainty that the instructional model this fall will look nothing like the instructional model from the spring. The response and the outcome of what we needed to react to in spring is a very different landscape than what it is that we're doing in the fall. We have spent a lot of time this summer working with our teachers as well as our administrators and developing what's really being called a learner-focused instructional model. Our focus is on 3 priorities. Priority 1 is intentional planning and ensuring that our students have individual planning and learned opportunities. Priority 2 is accelerated learning, making sure that we targeting the individual needs of students and ensuring that individual needs are being met during this time, and students are growing at an accelerated rate, double time in some cases. And number 3 is the fact that we are explicitly teaching and responding to the learning needs and the targeted needs of your students. So under those 3 priorities, we really set forth a instructional model that hones in on the principles of blended learning, which is an integration of technology within the instructional model, as well as a combination of personalized learning so that we can address the individual needs of your children in a more comprehensive way. The piece that I do want to mention in regards to the instructional model is, though there's choice becomes, sort of 2 separate paths. So as much as we are discussing with you tonight the hybrid model, we understand that the virtual Viking model is also a temporary option for you as a parent. So we want to make sure that you're clear that all of those principles stand true. So I want to explain for a quick minute and walk you through a sample high school student week, because I think that might help. So in the hybrid model, if I have a student that's in cohort A, that child would be attending school, obviously, on Monday and Tuesday. During the course of that instruction, when your child is in front of our teachers, we will be focusing on small group and individual instruction. There will be very minimal whole group instruction, because we need to make sure that our students are coming in with their level of skill set, but that we're moving those skill set forwards on an individual level, not on a whole group level, and so that we make sure all kids are getting the education that they deserve. Now, prior to them leaving on Tuesday, your child will have a developed personalized learning plan that has articulated learning targets, tasks, time frame, and directions, along with somewhat of a mock schedule, if you will, that will help them navigate the schedule of Thursday and Friday when they are asynchronous at home. So if you really think about an 85-minute high school instructional block, within the instructional block itself, your child was receiving most likely a level of instruction upwards of anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes, but the other 45 minutes is meant to be for them to obviously apply, receive feedback, gain knowledge, collaborate with their peers, and delve deeper into their learning within that time block. So if you think about that and that 85-minute block, all we're really doing here is we're trying to make it that when your child is in front of us on those 2 days, they are getting targeted, small, and individual group instruction. Then your child leaves on Tuesday, should they be in cohort A. They have their learning plan, which is scheduled out for Thursday and Friday. Then on Wednesday, they're logging in and they're going on Zoom for an entire half day. They are on Zoom. During that time, they're receiving targeted whole group mini lesson instruction. So that is the opportunity, because we don't want them thinking as cohort A and cohort B as 2 separate masses. We want them thinking that they are a class together. So we need to bring them together as a whole group class, and they will be engaged in that whole group mini lesson instruction. Then after that, quote unquote, half day is dismissed, I'm going to use the term dismissed, your child then would be able to engage in some of the levels of work from that whole group that is separate from their learning plan. So that Wednesday afternoon, they will have targeted tasks that need to be completed during that Wednesday time. Now, with that being said, that's also the opportunity for our teachers to offer office hours as well as individualized support to students. Then comes Thursday and Friday. So you as a family might need to navigate with your child in regards to the fact that you might know that your child's struggling in history class, but they're really accelerating in English. So you might look at your child's learning targets and their schedule for Thursday and Friday, and you might say, listen, rather than you working on the social studies work during this time on Thursday or Friday, I'm going to work on that when I come home from work, and I'm going to help support you with that. But that is not to say that the teacher is going to be null and void. That plan that your student is working on is an articulated learning target, standards-based plan that will have outcomes and end dates within those. Now, that also means that our teachers will be spending Wednesdays as well as during their planning times, developing pre-recorded videos as well as targeted mini lessons for your child to also have access to. So one of the things that we have to do instructionally is we have to make sure that your student has access to things virtually as well as access to things in the classroom. So we'll be working to navigate those as well. But I just wanted to interject and really be clear, fall will not look like spring. It is a very different instructional model. We are supporting our teachers on professional learning, and you will see very clear targeted outcomes for your students. So, and I know we only have a couple minutes, so I don't want to give too much airtime, but I'm always a phone call or email away. Thank you.
Deb, this question's, Ms. Kelly, thank you, Ms. Joan. This question's come up a bunch of times. Are there any classes that are being canceled because we can't adhere to proper safety precautions?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. All right.
No, by going hybrid and having classes at half capacity or about half capacity, we will be able to offer, we are moving some rooms around so that some classes that might have been in one space or in a different space based on the size of the class. And obviously taking a close look at our PE classes and music classes, which tend to be our bigger classes.
So, Ms. Kelly, I think, we're close to the end here. I don't know if you want to. There's certainly a lot of questions in the chat that we still need to address. Obviously we'll be communicating with families, but a Q&A may be based off of some of the questions that we didn't get to in the chat. Might be helpful moving forward.
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody signing in today and asking all of these questions. I think in order for us to be able to think about all of the things we need to think about, we need to put all of our heads together. So I do appreciate the questions because there's a lot to consider and everyone's perspective is a little bit different. For the questions we didn't get to, we'll take a look at saving the chat and being able to take a look at those. I jotted down some of the questions that we need to seek out some answers to, and we'll try to get information out about those as well. And as Ms. Drown said, we are a phone call or an email away if you have specific questions, especially for us about the high school and what this is going to look like when your student returns to the school. And Mr. Kidd and Mr. Fasulo and I are happy to help as much as we can. As I mentioned before, there'll be some information coming out by the end of the week about the freshman orientation. So be looking for that if you have an incoming 9th grader. And there will continue to be information coming out too. One of the things that wasn't asked, but we will be continuing to provide parent nights throughout the year the way that we have in the past, but it will be virtually. So you'll have another opportunity that's typically with the counselors and an administrator there to check in with all of us. Mr. Kidd, Mr. Fasulo, anything else?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. I know there are a lot of questions. I know that there is some frustration. This is new for all of us. We have never run a school during a pandemic. We appreciate your patience. We look forward to seeing your sons and daughters. We love this community and have been part of this community for a long time and are going to be working extremely hard to make sure that your sons and daughters are safe. We care about them greatly and hope that you all are well right now and look forward to seeing your sons and daughters soon.
Just as our team, we will further populate as best as possible the East Lyme Schools website. So if you go to the main East Lyme Schools website, we have our roadmap to reopening that has some more details for some of these questions. And we'll try to populate that as best as we can. And we really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Newton? He's gone. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And again, if there's anything else that we can answer for you, feel free to send us an email or a quick call.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.